What's up, climber? Get excited. We've got cardio conditioning, we got strength training, all combined. Sit low, reach high. Come on. Keep working, keep working.
When I was 17 years old, I had a friend named Rick, and I was heading to Syracuse University a year later, and he was heading to Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama. And he took me to Auburn for a week. I had never been south of the Mason-Dixon line. And we stayed on campus. And as I got there and I was meeting people I'd never met before, I asked him, "What do you guys do on this campus?" And he said, "Well, we talk about football and how we're going to beat the University of Alabama." Oh, man, that's cool. A couple days later, Rick took me to Tuscaloosa to meet a mutual friend, and we were on the campus of the University of Alabama. And I asked the question to the people on that campus, "What do you guys do here?" It's like, "Well, we play football, we talk about football, and then we talk about how we're going to beat Auburn University." Wow, okay, that's cool. I caught up with both of those guys 30 years later, and I asked them, what are you guys doing? And the one who went to Auburn lives 15 minutes from Auburn, and the one who went to the University of Alabama lives 30 minutes from where he went to college. And I said, "Wow, this is really cool. Like, how come you guys settled, in your roots?" And one of them said, "Most of us, it's in our blood. It's part of who we are. Our families are here." And then he paused and he very reflectively said, "Every now and then, one of us gets away." And they go on to do some extraordinary and unexpected things. Today's show, Welcome to A Climb to the Top, is about one of those who went to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and got away and went on to do the unexpected and extraordinary things. Welcome to A Climb to the Top. I'm Chuck Garcia, host of your show today. And our show today is sponsored by Climber, CLMBR, the most efficient full body cardio and strength fitness machine available with instructor-led on-demand climbing and fitness classes. Key investors in this wonderful innovation include Novak Djokovic, Jay-Z, and Ryan Seacrest. To learn more about Climber, CLMBR, and purchase one for your home or gym, for $250 savings, click climberclmbr.com and you can put the code CHUCK250 for a $250 discount. Our guest today, the one who got away, is named Henry Hall. And Henry, thank you very much for coming on to A Climb to the Top.
Thank you very much, Chuck. I may use that byline on my business cards now.
I appreciate that, the one that got away. And Henry, it's so great to have you here because as Henry and I are speaking, to those of you watching us on YouTube, I am coming to you from New York, but Henry is not coming to us from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, but in fact from London, England. And Henry, if you in fact are one of those who got away, take us back to your roots. Where did you grow up in Alabama? And what happened during your time that you made a decision in your early 20s to either stay or go?
Well, I grew up on a cattle farm in northern Alabama, about an hour and a half from Huntsville, 2.5 hours from Nashville, South Muscle Shoals area. Muscle Shoals sound, known for its music, but I was growing up on a farm, really in the middle of nowhere. Family had been there multiple generations, going back probably 150, 200 years. And all my family even now still lives in Alabama. So it is common. It's a nice place to live, which I guess is why a lot of people don't want to get away. But yeah, people do stick quite close to the land. But for me, and so I grew up feeding cattle and going to school and marching in the band and kind of typical things, and playing football and watching football. I guess in the rural South required as well. But for me, it kind of started when I would say started, late teens. I was always a really vociferous reader, and always reading about faraway places. And of course, one always goes through different career with what you want to be when you grow up. But for me, it was always kind of looking at things in distant lands, or even distant in the U.S., like, going out west, living in Montana in the wilderness, or going, sailing around the world, or I don't know, these kind of fantastical voyages of the mind and everything. And then And as I evolved, always someone once gave me the book, a classic, probably a lot of people know, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There's a lot of good self-help books out there. Of course, that's certainly one of the old school ones, but I still regularly read that, and that. I think I really ignited a fire in me that I wanted something. Well, I won't say something better. It gives a little bit of value. Let's just say something different, and I don't know, a yearning forward. I've always been, and with my career trajectory or life trajectory, I didn't have I decided I wanted to become a doctor or a war correspondent or whatever that case may be, or a singer, and that's what I dedicated my life to. Mine was more just trying to fit a yearning of curiosity, and so I don't know if you like the astrology. I'm Gemini, so I'm always, air and exploring new things, and particularly communicating. And so, I like meeting new people and kind of pushing my own self out of my comfort zone. And for me, it's been a gradual, process. But it started when I was on the farm and even on the tractor, listening to the radio or and thinking about distant places.
Well, it's fair to say you literally walked off the farm and you made a conscious decision that you were not going back to the farm because you ended up at Harvard Law School. Did you set out to be a lawyer? And then I want to get to Wall Street in just a second, but help us understand the path of your career trajectory before we take some twists and turns.
It was kind of for me, it was a case, and maybe even still is a case of expanding consciousness. So my the extent of my world in Alabama was the greatest educational institution you could ever aspire to go to would be Auburn or Alabama. In state. I didn't know the thought of an Ivy League or different places didn't. I guess I knew they existed, but didn't even occur to me. And so the first step was going to University of Alabama, and I was not an attentive student in most of my school and high school, but gradually awoke when I took an aptitude test once and scored extremely high, and kind of woke everybody up, and it woke myself up, quite frankly. It's like, well, hey, you're smart, or you can actually go to university.
Who knew?
At that point, I was considering should I. Even one year I took welding. At the trade college.
Yeah.
Was going the technical route. So
and that would come in handy on the farm on the tractor.
exactly. Because even a technical trade is a step up in terms of earning income, stability, and so forth than an agricultural income.
Right.
But after that, then I aspired to university, went to University of Alabama, and knew that to go where I wanted to go, the only way I would get there is really through being an outstanding student at University of Alabama. So when I was there, that was really my focus, and just gradually conscious expanding. Then after graduating, went to Atlanta and got my CFA, and then wanted to go to graduate school, and wanted to go to the best graduate school, and awoke that I wanted to train my mind for whatever challenge I brought, and that's why I actually decided to go to law school instead of getting an MBA.
Well, prior to law school, though, and to our listeners, CFA, to those in New York, more familiar potentially, because there's a lot of people in the profession, the chartered financial analyst, and all my days at BlackRock and my days on the investment management side, surrounded by people who were very well educated and passed these exams to become a CFA. So Henry started as a CFA, which is quite an important distinction if you're going to manage somebody else's money, because it's a great certification. But Henry, you went to law school. And you practiced law, if I remember, for a little bit, but you didn't in the corporate world. Paul Weiss, if I remember, Skadden Arps. Sorry, corrected. I knew it was one of those big ones. How long did you practice law?
I just practiced a couple of years there. I think kind of the next kind of expansion of consciousness, if we use that term, was at Harvard was in the early 90s. And so that was also when Eastern Europe collapsed of the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe opening up, and that attracted me in terms of, I like, even leading up to date, I like being in, let's call it edgy, transitional type of atmospheres, like the standard kind of corporate track. One of the numbers precede this number of years, so it never really appealed to me. So I was always working in East Germany or in Russia or in Kazakhstan, but this kind of transition, something out of the ordinary, where Henry Hall can make an impact, where Henry Hall is different, was always the attraction to me. And so that's even when I practiced law, rather than practicing in New York, I was in Hong Kong, for a couple of years.
Well,
So
I want to examine just a few things, because there's some interesting transitions here, that while you were trained to be an attorney and you had some finance training, you were at an interesting point in your world outcome as you were looking to what was going on in the world. How did you make that transition from being planted in the Northeast of the United States? What was the first thing that set you to leave and go explore and discover other worlds?
I think just the intellectual challenge, kind of, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of grass is greener syndrome, where when I'm sitting and seeing all my classmates doing the same thing, whatever, with different firms, but the kind of same thing, and it's a great lifestyle, no doubt about it. But I see this, like, these kind of once in a lifetime changes happening, over there, so to speak. And I've always liked extreme meritocracies, and so, the ability to go in a market like Russia and be doing things for the first time, that haven't been done before. Even if, let's just say, doing that makes the same amount of income as doing the job in New York, that challenges me more. I like saying, wow, that's interesting stuff, and it's making an impact. I guess I keep going back to impact. What impact is Henry Hall making that maybe someone else couldn't make? And that appeals to me.
I appreciate that. And as you were navigating that world, as we think about a profession, what were you? Lawyer, banker? Describe what you were becoming.
I would say I was becoming an advisor, because what I found with my own skill set is, and maybe my own attention span, as well, is, I'm quite flexible and versatile, and I like new experiences, and so I have quite a broad background of different countries, different markets, different clients, different skills that I like putting together. I'll say repackaging in unique ways, or repackaging, again, in a way that only I could do, so to speak. So, even whether I'm working for a bank, or private banking, or a firm or startup or whatever, it may have a different title, but in effect, it's an advisor. Let me contribute to this endeavor based on my unique set of skills. And that sounds a bit like a job interview pitch, but it's, for me, and it's become even more pronounced over the last several years, is this this feeling of satisfaction of contributing and seeing impact of my work, my unique work, my unique. I mean, everybody is unique, but my own special way of doing things is very satisfying to me.
Right. Yet you have the skills of a lawyer, of which you are barred in a state in the United States. Yet here you are outside of that. You tell us about your Wall Street experience. I want to dial into what led you to do what you do now, because to our listeners, I think what you do now is the most interesting part of this, because that mountain that you climbed has led you to a place. So talk about the Wall Street experience. What did you do and who did you do it for?
Well, the transition, so I was working for a law firm, and even in Hong Kong, in a great law firm and so forth. But, obviously the business model of a law firm is you're selling your time, you're billing by the hour. And it was, brutal work hours, and, all over Asia and so forth. But but a lot of times the work, while from in a macro sense is quite interesting, can get very tedious. I mean, it literally is editing, offering documents, and so forth. And again, charging by the hour. So for me, it was a good experience, but became clear is this is not the most impactful place for me to be. Your impact is not measured by the hour in a pyramid structure, right? Your impact is measured by your intellectual contribution, and maybe it takes you 2 minutes or 2 months, but it's the results, not just by the hour. So
Right.
I wanted to transition into an environment where that was amplified, the most possible, and that was the trading floor.
Right. And Henry,
And
can you
yeah,
just a moment, can you either push your laptop a little forward or back up just a touch? Okay, that's better.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah, so I wanted to, I mean, because of my background, I wanted to continue in finance, but where I would have, I'll say, maximum impact. It wasn't about time, it was about intellectual contribution. And so with my legal background, and kind of, again, this is in the mid 90s now, or late 90s, the particular derivatives market was just evolving, and fixed income and, credit default swaps, or all these derivatives, structured trades, quite abstract things that fit well with a legal background. So my niche, because I always try to have a niche. What am I uniquely doing? Was to be on the trading floor, but not as the in-house counsel, so to speak, but as the the under the designer and interpreter of complex legal structures. As
for the
opposed to,
purpose of what?
yes, well, for the purpose of designing trades, it could be tax, could be accounting, but to come up with economic results. So there was kind of, I'll say, the quantitative people that are looking at complicated models, computer programs, and so forth. The quants, so to speak, that are always there. But
Mhm.
I was kind of in that category, but on the qualitative side. So I was designing, what would work for the client, but still understanding the finance behind it, whether it's options or swaps or different things, and designing trades and structures, and so forth, for, again, kind of the first of its kind, one of a kind. It was working for JP Morgan at that point. So what I was doing, what we were doing, was, from a financial standpoint, cutting edge, and the first. Now it's all standard, but that was the first, and that appealed to me as well, is putting
Right.
my
And at that point, though, you were very much living into what we consider the institutional world, not
yes,
necessarily, you were certainly helping clients who had an institutional need that is a very big thing that we don't read too much about, and
right,
that a consumer probably wouldn't know much.
right.
However, what you were doing, and this is where I want to get to what led you to the Middle East and then ultimately toward now, and the interesting that work you're doing in the service of others and their lives. You were learning, you were becoming a strategic advisor, you were using legal skills, you certainly had financial qualifications that you put to test. So you represented the integration of a lot of skills. Yet the impact that you were having was very much rooted in the institutional world.
Absolutely.
Did you have a sense that you were going to gravitate towards something on a much larger consumer scale, or did you feel you were going to stay in that world for a while?
I felt like I would, well, I felt like, and I did stay in that world for quite a while. But after a while, I mean, I started in New York, then I moved to London, from Latin America to Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and so forth, and doing different things, managing more people, having more business, and all of these things. But the key thing about all of it is, I mean, it's a very, let's just say, economically useful endeavor. I mean, it makes the markets more efficient, and the flow of capital and so forth. But that's all very abstract. So it's useful. It is purely institutional. Now the institutions are managing money for human beings that have pension funds, and we all know all of that. But from a day-to-day perspective, sitting on a trading floor surrounded by screens, and designing derivative trades, or whatever flowing things, it's very abstract. You don't see the human impact of that. And for me, after a while, that became, it started off very intellectually interesting. After a while, became less so. I actually wanted to have more, to see more impact of what I was doing, not simply finding money for this big company, and this company makes products for consumers, or that's several layers removed. So kind of the work on the trading floor, to me, made me evolve, and almost want to go smaller, and and start honing my skills into more human contact and more companies working directly with them rather than on the trading floor.
Right. So that led you, in fact, it's while there are some steps in between in managing money for some big Middle Eastern institutions, I'm most interested in what you're doing now and who you are doing it for. Before we do that, can you introduce to our listeners and viewers the concept of microfinance? Just a little bit of education, because I think that'll help set up what you're doing today and just provide a little bit of education for those not in the financial realm.
Yeah, well, microfinance is from the opposite from the spectrum we were talking about. If one goes all the way to the other end of whatever that spectrum is, that's the microfinance. It is the smallest you can think of incremental unit of finance because it is generally low income and subsistence type individuals slash households. Now, the person that really pioneered that, and I believe won a Nobel Peace Prize for, or no, not Nobel Peace Prize, but Nobel Prize for it, was Muhammad Yunus, from Bangladesh and the microfinance and Grameen Bank and so forth.
Right.
So it's not a new concept, but it's an ever evolving concept. And so for me, with microfinance, it's and kind of different things. I guess my seeking for more cause and effect for my own efforts, more impact and satisfaction on the actual results led me to look at opportunities for working with startup companies, and particularly those having an impact, a positive impact, whether it be environmental impact or whatever, microfinance, but using the old expression, making a difference, but
Right.
um, not simply selling a new pizza delivery app, but actually impacting people's lives that otherwise would not be positively impacted. And
Right.
so
And let's talk about who they are, the organization that you represent now and the people who are the benefit of what you are doing.
yeah, well, I started work. It was a bit of gradual. While I was in banking and so on, I started working a lot with startups, advising some clients, investing in startups, and investing myself in startups and so forth, and really became interested not just in that sector, which lots of people are now, but how I can contribute to that. And again, it goes back to my generalist and broad skill set. I found quite useful for an early stage company that needs a bit of a lawyer, needs a bit of a banker, needs a bit of an accountant, needs a bit of a these type of things. Um, and kind of in that space, and then looking at what's happening now with the trends and environmentalism and so forth, I came across the opportunity. I was introduced to a company called PowerMe that is in Kenya and is a solar. They finance solar home systems in the microfinance way, as you mentioned before. It's an industry called pay as you go, and the whole industry started about 8 years ago, where you have an enormous amount of the population, particularly in Africa, but it's also true in India and in Asia, that are off the grid, that do not have electricity. And of course, especially now, even with things such as a mobile phone, no place to even charge the mobile phone, but they're off the grid and they're not going to be on the grid because it's just too sparsely populated.
Mhm.
But where the industry sprung up, but these people will buy charcoal or wood or kerosene every day to light their homes. They may buy a day's worth, 2 days worth, but because they're subsistence farmers, they don't have that much money, so they will go and buy it just to use that night. The industry sprung up with, what can I offer from an ecological clean perspective for power, for example, solar, that would cost this person the same or less than they currently pay for kerosene or charcoal. It would be a better product, the same economics for them, and of course be much better for the environment. And that started about 8 years ago. And of course, with the price of solar, which has come down exponentially, the proposition has even gotten better and better. But we basically sell these solar home systems to households that then pay us back over 2 to 3 years period. And they pay us a certain amount every day with their mobile phone. And if they make the payment, the system works. If they don't make a payment today, it doesn't work. But that's how, because the one thing, in particular, I can only comment on sub-Saharan Africa, where I have a lot of experience. But the mobile phone, and not even a smartphone, but the mobile phone is the preferred banking method there. And so mobile payments are they're everywhere. And even in the villages without electricity, there'll be, maybe someone with a solar charger that sells phone charging services. But when we're able to provide this type of unit for people, they have lights for their children to study, they have a place to charge their phone, they have a clean atmosphere inside their home. And it's just a wonderful value proposition it's a win-win-win type situation. And so I got involved with that, as well as other impactful startups. But that's my main focus now, is working with this company in expanding and raising capital, both debt and equity capital and so forth, to expand the range of running these pay-as-you-go solar systems in Kenya.
Well, this is such a wonderful evolution of the skill set that many years ago started very big, very broad, with a law degree, CFA, working for very large financial institutions. And your transformation, Henry, to me, is you've taken these skills and you've gone small, because you've been able to bring that to people who otherwise didn't have electricity, had to find alternative means to keep their family fed. Did you envision getting to this?
No, that's the thing. It'd be nice to have a broad vision, even I kind of envision the next steps and so forth, but I've more and more kind of evolved to trust my gut instinct, and my emotional guidance system, in the law of attraction, would say.
Yeah.
So I was not even aware this pay-as-you-go solar sector existed, but I did feel a calling to use my skills in I wasn't drawn by environmental. I do freelance even for Client Earth, an environmental legal group. And so I've been drawn to the environmental movement, to use a broad word,
Yeah.
for a while, and was kind of, so it appealed to me to apply it in that context. But without the synchronicity of meeting various people and coming across this company, I would not have found the opportunity. So I would like to think it's a wonderful master plan, but it's more feeling the universe guiding me.
Yeah. In fact, usually to so many of our listeners, particularly my students at Columbia, they feel they need a master plan. And what I tell them is sometimes the Leonard Bernstein quote: in order to do great things, you need two things. You need a plan and not enough time. And then if you go on and you hear about Bernstein's plan, he says it's hardly a plan at all. It's a note at a time. And that's how Beethoven wrote his symphonies. That's how.
Right.
But I think this is a really cool story, Henry, because you could not have envisioned each of those turns, but you were dedicated to use your skills in order to make impact. And now you are making an impact in 100 and how many people's lives. But here's the question, Henry. You've learned a lot along the way, but what have you learned about yourself through the course of these transitions?
Well, a few things. I have to always have variety. I need to have a variety of people and situations. I need to have a big enough challenge to keep me focused. Kind of the cruising doesn't work for me.
Right.
And I need to, and it kind of goes back to your earlier question or point about having a plan. I've generally found that I generally can't sit and think myself into my next moves. To some extent, of course, I'm thinking and looking at opportunities and assessing and so forth. But I've had different stages in my life where I was like, I don't know, in between um, clients or in between jobs, and like, okay, and I'm gonna sit and research and come up with this master plan. What area is expanding, and what skills would where would my skills fit, and so forth. Um, but I end up getting into paralysis by analysis, and you have to have some analysis, but I find I have to move, because it's only by interacting with people, because I can also tend to be a bit isolationist myself. But what's good for my soul is being out and interacting with people and communicating, because only then it's kind of I don't know, the juices of the universe, flow, and that's when the ideas come to me, not by my own, in a tower thinking.
Well, that's a very good point. In fact, I want to leave the audience with that. Henry, what you're describing is sometimes it's difficult in spite of whatever brilliance any of us may carry. We got to get out of our own head. And to your
Yes.
point is the way to get out of your own head is to take those skills and start interacting with other people that interact with your heart. Because what you're doing right now is an extremely heartfelt thing. Yet when I think about your career initiation, it was very much of the mind. There were
Absolutely.
exams
Absolutely.
to pass, certifications. So what do you want our audience to think and to feel and to do when they look at the world of endless possibilities? What's your advice?
Well, you have to kind of be true to yourself. I mean, I guess it's not my advice. It goes back to ancient times. Know thyself. And that, I guess that can take sort of internal analysis, but know yourself. I mean, you need to. For me, I I like reading philosophy. That's something that I've increased. I like Stoic philosophy. That's kind of my internal guidance system. But like one of um, the quote, I read it every morning. Like today's quote was from I think it's Plutarch that said, who watches the watchman?
Right.
And so meaning, I have my philosophy and my values and so forth, but I also have to be aware of the other atmosphere and my body and my own weaknesses and so forth that I have myself. So know thyself, but also don't be afraid to take risk. Things always work out. In my it's a cliche. Things always work out for the best, but in my experience, I'm not quite risk adverse because I have found that things do work out for the best. But you got to take the risk. I think as we spoke to begin with, if you're not making mistakes,
Mhm.
you're not trying hard enough, or you're not getting out of your comfort zone, and that's the only way it works.
Indeed. So a couple takeaways here before we come off the air. As Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all true wisdom. And I think Henry Hall is certainly your story underscores the Aristotle philosophy of knowing thyself, but also don't be afraid to make a mistake. Be afraid of not learning from them. And if you take a risk and you have to adjust, we adjust. That's just part of the human spirit.
Well, and also going back to your earlier comment about people from Alabama, I've generally, I've lived quite a lot internationally in different places, and from time to time, even in Dubai or Moscow or I don't know, different places, you'll come across someone from Alabama. I'll tell people, I say, look, when you meet someone from Alabama in this context, you may or may not like them, but you should at least give them an extra minute because they probably have an interesting story.
Indeed. In fact, we open that way. We're going to close that way. That Henry Hall walked off the farm. And while he did the conventional University of Alabama route to begin his education took him all the way all over the world and now to Kenya to bring electricity and a sense of scale to consumers who need it. Is a world way beyond Wall Street. That for those who want to go to Wall Street, we don't often think that the skill set may help us to make the world a better place. Part of the theme of this show is yesterday I was clever and I wanted to change the world. But today I am wise, so I am changing myself. And Henry, what you have done is you have changed yourself, and I'm grateful for you coming onto the show.
Well, thank you very much, Chuck. It's been a real honor and pleasure.
Indeed.
Really
And to our sponsor, I'm Chuck Garcia, host of A Climb to the Top. You can always reach me at chuckgarcia.com. Our show today was sponsored by Climber, CLMBR, the most efficient full body cardio and strength fitness machine available with instructor-led on-demand climbing and fitness classes. Key investors in Climber include Novak Djokovic, Jay-Z, and Ryan Seacrest. To learn more about Climber, go to clmbr.com, and to buy one, use the code CHUCK250 at checkout to save $250 on your full paid offer. Climber also offers a convenient interest-free financing option, and it cannot be combined with any other offers. But thank you very much for listening. As always, we appreciate that. Please send your comments. We love to hear from you. Henry, coming to us from London, England, which has taken it on the chin. And there's been a lot of tough places in the COVID world, but I know London and our hearts are with you guys. You had a tough time, as we all did, but You guys are in the news for Brexit, then you're in the news for COVID, and I hope that things are well now. We're getting better.
Well, London is London. It's been here a long time, and it will be here a long time.
And continue it will. And Henry, we are going to sign off tonight. To our listeners, good night. And to Henry, thank you very much for your contribution. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
We're getting excited. We've got cardio conditioning, we got strength training, all combined. Sit low, reach high. Come on. Keep working, keep working.